Morning. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of November 14th, 2023. Welcome. Let's establish a quorum.
Good morning.
Morning.
For roll call, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Lester.
Here.
Mr. Hoff. Mr. Kane.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Robertson.
Here.
Mr. Sorensen.
Here.
Commissioner Gordon. And Secretary Hunt.
Yes, here.
Mr. Chair, please let the record reflect that 5 members are present, and we do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right, let's, everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, thank you. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes of October 17th? And can we get a motion to approve the minutes of the 17th?
I make a motion, we approve October 17 minutes.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ralph. All right. Commission reports. Janice is traveling today, so she's here, but I have several items to report. She was busy. On October 17th, on behalf of the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission, the chair granted approval for a preliminary plan and final plat for Brown Farm, M-200051, Commissioner District 1. Also on October 17th, the chair granted approval of the final site plan for New Beginnings Lot 1, S-200014, Commissioner District 1. Again on the 17th, the chair granted approval of the final site plan for Pippin Farm Solar Facility, S-21-0030, Commissioner District 2. She must have been here all day on the 17th. And on the 17th, the chair granted approval of the final site plan for Good Feelings Farm LLC, S-220008, Commissioner District 4. Continuing on the 17th, the chair granted approval of the final site plan for Northeastern Supply in Eldersburg, S-220006, Commissioner District 5. And then on November 3rd, the chair issued final approval for 2 site development plans: Performance Food Service, Maryland, the 9th amended S-180021, and for Wendy's Eldersburg, S-220040, a new Wendy's restaurant. So she was busy. Commissioner Gordon's not here. He's running a little late. Any other commission members with reports? Sir? Okay. All right, administrator report. Chris.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So just a couple of things to make note of. First of all, at the last meeting, we announced that our county attorney that represents Planning Commission moved on to another career with Baltimore City. So our county attorney's office is currently working on backfilling that position. But in the meantime, we've brought on board Ms. Michelle Ostrander who will be representing us and answering any questions, legal questions that you may have. So, welcome, Michelle.
Welcome.
The only other thing to note is that we will not be having an evening meeting on, I forget the date, November 29th, I think it was. So our next regularly scheduled meeting will be December 19th, which will be a regular meeting during the day. And that's all I have as far as items for myself. I don't believe we have any extensions. So we have Mr. Randolph Mitchell here regarding BZA cases.
Thanks, Chris. So I had one BZA case to present, case number 6476. The requested conditional use is for a commercial kennel for 10 dogs or less, with one variance from the minimum lot acreage. And this property is located at 1309 Pinch Valley Road, Westminster, Maryland. This property is also zoned agriculture on a 3.06 acre lot. And planning staff finds this conditional use and variance is consistent with the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019, and would not have any adverse effects on the current use of the property or surrounding areas.
Okay, thanks, Randall.
Thanks.
And that's all I have for administrative reports.
All right, moving on to election of the commission chair and vice chair and secretary. So we have a script to follow per meeting procedures. So I hold the record open for the board position of secretary. Are there any nominations for the board position of secretary?
That guy.
Yeah, Chris Hines?
Chris, would you be willing to serve as secretary?
I would be happy to. I would be honored to.
I would nominate Chris to be our secretary, please.
Thank you, Pete. I'm sure Chris got a little nervous there. That motion needs to be seconded.
I second.
Okay. So a motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other nominations for the board position of secretary?
I move nomination be closed.
Hearing none. Okay. All those in favor of electing Christopher for the board position of secretary, say aye. Aye. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you.
Now we hand you the gavel. You're gonna come join us for this. I guess to make it official.
Welcome to the front row.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so in accordance with the rules and procedures of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Carroll County, I now declare the nominations open for the office of chair.
I'd nominate Janice to be our chair for next year.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion, a couple seconds. So Ms. Janice Kirkner has been nominated and seconded for the office of chair. Are there any other nominations for the office of chair?
I'd like to close the nomination for the office of chair to elect Janice Kirkner for the office of chair.
We have a motion to close and elect via acclamation. That needs to be seconded.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we now accept nominations for the office of vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Michael Kane.
Second.
Very good. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Motion we close.
I'll second.
Okay. And so all those in favor of the motion to elect Mr. Kane as vice chair? Any opposed? All right. So congratulations, Mr. Kane. And I will relinquish the power back to you.
Thank
Did a
you.
good job.
Thank you.
That was great.
Maybe need to rethink all those positions, just let him do all three, you know?
Yeah.
That was quick.
Well, it was a little different with Janice not being here, you know, because it's a script per the rules and procedures of the meeting. And with her, Chris and I were emailing back and forth, like, well, I'm not, do I open this up? Because, you know, she's the chair, I'm acting, and we decided, like, 2 minutes before the meeting, Chris will say, Chris said, I'll just, you know, do that. But you're right, he probably should have sat up here the whole time. Yeah. Okay. All right, so next on our agenda is a review of the administrative rules and a review of the 2024 meeting dates.
Yeah, so we sent around to all of you the current bylaws for the Planning and Zoning Commission. They were last amended on April 18th of this year. So does anybody have any questions or any items in the bylaws they would like to discuss for revision?
Now, is the assumption for the evening meetings that we're going back to in person, full-time, and not doing the go-to meetings anymore? Because we just haven't had an evening meeting in
Right,
quite a while,
yes.
so.
Yeah, that's our preference, especially
okay.
because the purpose of the evening meetings is primarily for a workshop for discussion and so on, and that's much easier in person, especially if we want to get citizens involved in the discussions.
Yeah,
So-
I'm fine with it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make that point of clarification.
Yes, yeah. I don't believe,
Do we need to change the bylaws to reflect that?
I don't believe that it's documented in the bylaws unless I missed it. So I think that was just a practice that got established during COVID, but I don't believe it actually states in the bylaws that the evening meetings are required to be virtual or required to be any sort of type of meeting.
The other thing I would say is, do we need to codify or add in there anything concerning how we're now receiving information? Are you comfortable with how we're doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as
I'm
you all
fine
are
with it the
comfortable,
way it is.
we're comfortable.
Yeah, okay. I have no additions.
Okay, very good. Then we will leave them as they are. The other item we wanted to talk about were the proposed meeting dates for 2024. So hopefully you all have a list of that. So just as a refresher, our standard practice is that we have our regular day meetings such as this on the third Tuesday of every month. And then we also set aside the first and fifth Wednesday of every month for a potential evening meeting. So using those parameters, we've listed all of the potential meeting dates. My recommendation would be that we cancel some of the evening meeting dates that are one after the other. We could always reestablish them if there's something that we're working on that requires more meetings, but to get it on everybody's schedules, I'd recommend that we cancel some of those. So the first one that I would like to note is January 3rd, with the proximity to New Year's Eve and so on. I would recommend canceling that, and I'm not aware of anything at this point that would require an evening meeting for early January anyways. So I would recommend that change. Next would be January 31st and February 7th. I would recommend that we eliminate one of those. I don't know if anybody has a preference, but my suggestion would be the January 31st meeting to cancel that.
Okay.
So I'm just going to run through these. If anybody has any other
no,
opinions, please,
good.
and please
Go
let me
ahead.
know. The next one would be May 29th and June 5th. I would recommend canceling one of those, and with everything else being equal, I'd suggest May 29th.
Right, and the holiday, Memorial Day and
Yes.
all that, yep.
We then have July 31st and August 7th. I don't know that I really have a preference, but I would go with July 31st if there are no other objections, just to pick one.
Yeah.
Wait, so that would mean that we would have one meeting in
One meeting
July?
In July, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the next one would be October 30th and November 6th. So, again, everything else being equal, if we cancel October 30th and have November 6th set aside.
Okay. Okay. I would say, I think those Wednesday meetings do have some value. I know, gosh, the last couple of meetings, our Tuesday meetings, we've had pretty full agendas. And we've had some members that had to, leave early for work commitments and things like that. So we, let's, and I know it's fluid.
Yes.
Things come at us that you can't plan for, even though we are planning. But,
ironic, yes.
So we just have to be open in case we have to, add another Wednesday meeting for preparation and things like that.
Yes.
To keep that Tuesday agenda a little bit more manageable. 'Cause
Yeah, I would echo that. As one of the guys who had to leave,
I wasn't
I
picking on you.
appreciate that. No, I'm just, I did. I mean,
Yeah.
because, you know, we've got stuff that we have to get done.
Right.
That's our normal day job, so.
Right.
I would rather have the two shorter meetings than one epic meeting.
I'd agree.
But again, I'll do whatever we need to do. So, meeting just to meet is not good either. I don't want to do that at all.
Right.
So, you know, I appreciate y'all
Yes.
being mindful of all that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And as we move forward with, so we're going to be getting into the county master plan and so on over the next year or so. So that's going to lend itself to a lot of discussions and so on, which I think will push to those Wednesday evening meetings rather than bogging down this meeting. Keep the business on Tuesdays and then workshops on the Wednesday evenings.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Very good.
Any other comments?
We will get these published for you all, and again, as things come up, we can certainly shift days back and forth as need be, but this at least will get all the meetings on our calendars and planned for.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Chris. All right. Next up is a concept site plan, S-220022 Bear Branch Nature Center Pavilion. And we have Amy. Is Amy here? Yep.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm sorry, Mary just corrected me. I apologize. So the November 29th meeting, we will be having that because the Economic Development Land Use Study folks will be coming in to talk about that. So my apologies.
No worries. Okay.
Good morning, Amy Barcroft with the Bureau of Development Review with S-22-0022 Bear Branch Nature Center. This is a review of a concept site plan. No action is required, but the commission may consider delegating approval of the final site plan to the Planning Commission Chair. We are located at 2517 John Owings Road in Westminster. Carroll County Government operates and maintains Hashua Environmental Center and Bear Branch Nature Center, which is a 210-acre site on the northwest side of Bachman Valley Road, north of the city of Westminster. The property contains many environmental features, including trails, a restored homestead, and Lake Hashua. The property itself is in the unincorporated part of the county and zoned conservation. To the south, there are residential subdivisions, and to the east and western sides of the site, there are county-owned lands. This site and the adjacent properties are on private well and septic. A site plan was submitted September 2022, and plans were distributed for review. The developer proposes to add a new open-sided pavilion at the Bear Branch Nature Center for visitor use. The plan shows the pavilion located to the east of the existing nature center and parking lot. The pavilion is proposed to be 40 by 40 feet in size, and a new 8-foot wide concrete sidewalk is proposed to connect the pavilion to the existing parking lot. A proposed retaining wall will also be added with the project due to grading and topography. The proposed site plan was subject to citizen involvement during our technical review committee meeting in October of 2022. No citizens spoke during the meeting, and we have not received any written comments or questions. Stormwater Management has issued concept approval for the project. The plan shows that stormwater will be addressed using a dry well and grass swale. Forest conservation, landscaping, and soil conservation are not applicable due to the small scope of the plan. The Health Department, Emergency Services, Bureau of Engineering, Roads, and Zoning Administration have approved the plan. Floodplain is exempt. It is outside the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Utilities. Water Resource Management and Site Compliance have comments to be addressed for approval as of the writing of the report, but since that time, Site Compliance has issued final approval of the plan. The final site plan will be tested and reviewed for adequacy of public facilities in accordance with Chapter 155. I have some photos of the proposed location of the pavilion. Unfortunately, there were some school buses blocking my line of sight that day that I was in the field, but beyond the school buses is where you'll see the connection from the current ADA accessible walkway into the field where the pavilion and walkway will be. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, I have representatives here from the Department of Parks and Rec, which is the developer of the project, and the engineer, CLSI.
Any questions, comments? What's the purpose of the pavilion? What will?
It'll serve a number of purposes. It'll be an outdoor classroom, for one, and then we could also rent it for events, weddings, such as that.
Okay.
So you're looking for us to approve this and?
There
give
is
the-
no
give the
action
authority?
required. This is just a concept review. But of course, if you, due to the small scope of the work, if you feel it appropriate to delegate final approval to the chair, then we won't need to come before you again for final approval.
I'd move we delegate this to the chair.
I'd second that as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Was there, I'm sorry,
You need a vote?
yeah, if you
Oh.
could do a quick vote on that.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Sorry. All right, next up, I should ask if there's any public comment about the
Planning is
planning, you know,
previous.
the Bear Branch Nature Center, any public comment? Seeing none, hearing none, we're good.
Move
right?
on.
Okay. All right. Next up, concept site.
As long as you're here, we can proceed.
Okay, well, that's good.
All right, so next up, the concept site plan S-20-0005, the Condon property amended. And we have Kirsten here to present.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Yes, Kirsten Marple with Bureau Development Review. I'm here with Dan Staley of DRS, the engineer for the project. This is a concept site plan, just like the one you just heard from Amy. So there's no action required, but you can, if you choose to delegate it to the chair for final approval. This is a site plan located, if you're familiar, just to the west of South Carroll High School. If you're not familiar, it's just to the east of the Route 26-27 intersection. Right in this area over here, where Salem Bottom meets Route 26 off of Old Liberty. This is an existing commercial site. This is the Condon property site. It was previously recorded in a site plan, or previously approved in a site plan for a auction house back in the early 2000s, 2006, or 2014, actually. So that site has been operating since that time. Things have changed a little bit over time, particularly because of COVID. Now a lot more is done online, if I understand correctly. So since 2014, they have, my understanding is they've reduced the number of live events they have at the site, and it's primarily storage for online auctioning. So what they've done is they've added some buildings over that course of time. But we haven't seen an updated site plan until today. So what we're talking about today is kind of a retroactive site plan, if you would. It's an existing condition site plan. So we're here before you today with a site plan, an amended site plan for this site to add additional buildings for storage for the existing use of an auction house. This site is located in an area, a little pocket that's zoned business, zone C2. A few of the other properties in the area are also zoned C2 and are used commercially. There are a few houses there too and farmland. The property to the north and east here is actually an agricultural preservation, so it's surrounded by farmland, this property in particular. We're in well and septic land here too, so there's no public water and sewer, and no additional water or sewage uses are proposed with this site. Again, it's just for storage. So what we are talking about, and this plan shows it maybe a little more clearly, there's an existing building here in the front that was approved in 2014. Since that time, this building back here, which is actually two trailers,
Two classroom portables.
yeah, so a mobile building, if you would, was placed on top of the existing parking lot area. And then in addition to that, there were a few tents that were also placed onto the existing parking lot, and multiple storage containers. So those buildings are what we're seeking approval for here through the site plan amendment, as well as reflecting the fact that there are storage containers on site now. This large building here is the one that was approved in 2014, and of course the parking lot was too, as well as the stormwater management pond. What's been added since then are these buildings, the trailers, the storage modules. This is the tent in the rear that you can see right there. And then this is the portable building. Okay, so this is all as-built. This is all obviously existing in use as storage. It's all storage. That's it. So through this review, because again, all of these were just placed on top of the existing approved paved surface, the parking lot area. There weren't too many technical review agency comments. In fact, stormwater management issued concept approval right at the gate. So there was no stormwater management required. Back in the day, this stormwater management pond was built for the original site plan, and it's able to accommodate what's there now, and pervious hasn't really changed much. The one main comments that came out of the review was for zoning. Zoning recognized that there were multiple storage containers, shipping crates, if you would, the large metal portable boxes on site. Those are limited. There's a certain percentage of those you can have on a site. If you have a primary building there for a business or factory or something, you can only have up to 25% of that main building's gross area. That's to say this building here in storage containers. So they had to go through the zoning office to seek a waiver or variance for that to allow for them to keep what they have. If they were to add much more, I imagine they probably need to come back and do that again, but of course we might also be talking about an updated site plan at that time if anything else starts to change on the site as far as structures go. So there's really not too much to talk about for plan review. Beyond that, most agencies approved it as it is, and there was nothing necessary to address it since they handled most of the requirements at the the 2014 stage. There are two agencies that still have comments at this point. Fire Protection is asking for verification that the previously approved and still existing water sources for fire protection are still in good standing and can be used to address fire protection, and to explain on the plan how fire protection will be addressed. And ADA requirements, site compliance, also needs additional details to show that the site will be in compliance with site compliance. So that's what we're looking for moving forward into the final review stage here. And again, of course, it's consistent with the designations established by the planning office through their memo. They've approved that as consistent. So we're really looking just at ADA requirements, fire protection requirements moving forward here into the final stage. We'll be back before you to talk about that in a little while, unless you wanted to delegate that to the chair. So there's no action required, but you can make that decision if you would like. And I can answer any questions, and Dan can try to speak for his client here if there were any specific questions about the site.
Kirsten, is this an opportunity for us to request that we get some landscaping in front of the facility to screen some of this storage?
Landscaping was not required by code, but the planning commission can of course make recommendations, requirements of a site.
It's kind of off the, I'm familiar with this area. When you cross Liberty Road, it's kind of screened know what I mean? The back, I guess you can see the back of the storage.
Yeah, we can, it's not, this isn't a huge thing, right? But, while we're here, and because we've kind of accumulated stuff, I don't think initially it was an issue, but as we get more and more things out there that we're storing, it might be helpful to have some evergreens out there to just screen that a little bit from the public view. You do have South Carroll High School right there. Frankly, the only time I've been on that road, I ran on it. There was a race held that started at that intersection just west of there, and we ran down to South Carroll High School. It was a New Year's Day run, and I don't even know if they do it. But it's not a huge request, and I wouldn't want to put a burden on a business owner in good standing in the community. At the same time, we've accumulated some things out there in that parking area, and storage-wise, it would be nice to screen some of it in some way.
I think it's a good thought. And, when we're going to talk about land use study in a little bit, and the transportation master plan route, Liberty Road 26 is a main road. We talked about similar things, beautification project for 140 coming across the reservoir into Carroll County, and just, making things look nice. So as we anticipate more growth and try to attract new business and things like that, I don't think it's a bad idea to suggest some landscaping to as part of a beautification effort or whatever. Yeah.
So, do we need are you looking for that would
Well,
just be,
I was
just
gonna-
a comment back.
Yeah.
Recommendation.
I'm not even gonna say that it's required.
Okay.
These people, these are good folks, they're in business, it's just a suggestion as a good neighbor, we think they ought to do it. And, if they don't, the next time they come back, maybe we'll throw the hammer at them. You've got the hammer.
If I could.
Yes, sir.
I'll certainly make my clients aware of it. You've got the person that runs the site is leasing the site, and then you've got an owner involved.
I see.
And if you look at the plan, across the road frontage, you've got a septic area, a septic reserve area there, you've got parking, you've got two entrances, so there's only 10 feet between those setbacks and the property line. Of course, the state's not gonna want us anything out in the state right away, but, so there's an opportunity for maybe a single row of evergreens. I'll certainly bring that up to my clients, see if they're willing to do it, to, I guess, lessen the visual impact to the site, but,
Thank you.
It's pretty private road, there's not much traffic along the road, and there's, the other business in the area look pretty much like this site here.
Appreciate that.
But we'll bring it to their attention now.
Thank you.
In terms of storage, and I'm sure fire's probably looking at this as well, but are there, what is
We
in-
do have approval from EOC. I did get that. And with Brian Van Fossen, what he wanted to know, there's a hydrant right across the street, and there's one, I think, down the road. And he just wanted to know that both those were operational. And he went back to the fire departments that use those hydrants, and he got them certified as they are operational. I've got that in my file, I'll be glad to email it to you. So the fire we're over with. The ADA stuff, I don't think we're gonna resolve that until we go in. Once we get a site plan approval, we gotta come back in and apply for a building permit for the three portables that are there and the 2 tents that are there to clean this mess up. This was an action by the zoning administrator that brought all this on, so. And we have, on our plan, we do have, well, when he first put the portables there, the public was invited into those buildings. No longer do they go there. All he uses those buildings for is storage. And Kobe kind of rearranged his landscape for him as far as how he does business. So, but those problems will be addressed when we go through the building permit process, though.
and there's, in terms of storage, no chemicals, things like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the tents were put up, he had an auction of, I don't know if they were antique cars but he had an auction of cars there, and one of the criteria that he had to do was to make sure these cars were under roof. So there was 2 tents put up for that, and, I asked him, I said, are you gonna take them down? He said, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and apply for permits for those also, to clean this violation up.
Any other questions?
So there will be no more storage containers other than what's there? Is that?
Well, I don't know the
on
answer to
here,
that,
or-
but, you know, I don't think they could put a whole lot more on there. So,
You never know.
If they were
Stacking 'em
to,
up.
if they were to, just like any site plan, if they were to change what was approved on the site and they bring more things onto the site without getting approvals yet, and somebody were to complain about that to the zoning administrator's office, then it opens an investigation and we end up where we are today, requiring them to update the site plan. So let's say tomorrow let's say theoretically we were approving it today as a final, which we're not, it's concept. And tomorrow they bring on more storage containers. Somebody calls to complain, zoning brings it to our attention, we get an updated site plan, we're back where we are today getting that approved, or they cart those things off. Either thing resolves the issue. So I can't say they won't bring more storage containers on, but if they do and it ends up with us, we're getting that through the review process.
But the way I understand this concept plan is, I guess according to current zoning, only 25% of the property is allowable for storage.
Correct.
And that it's being exceeded right now.
It is, and they did.
So if we're to 2,880, I think, square feet is what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So are you asking to cap it at 2,880 or leave it
So,
open-ended?
The
And I
way
think
it is right now, the applicant applied for a variance to allow for up to 50% as opposed to 25% of the storage area inside the primary building.
Right.
So they have approval for that already. So they can stay at that or go below that and not make a difference. But if they go over that, they would be violating the site plan because they brought more equipment onto the site. And in addition to that, they would have to go through the site plan review process and have to seek another variance, which they may or may not be granted.
So if the total square footage of the site is, if I'm reading this right, is, well, the containers right now are 5,916 square feet. I don't know what the total square footage of the site is.
The primary structure, this building here, the one from the original site plan, that's 5,900 square feet. The total amount for the storage containers are about 2,800, is what the zoning administrator's report stated.
So if he goes to 50%, we're basically giving him 3,000 square feet of,
They received approval for 50%. That was a decision made and already granted by the zoning administrator. We here in Planning Commission, we can't make a change to that. So that's the approval limit right now. What I was answering to Mr. Robertson's question is that if they were to bring another container on and they go to 5,900 square feet
There you
or 3,000 square feet, that could theoretically be called in as a complaint, brought back to zoning, and we end up back in the same loop again. Potentially seeking a variance, potentially being denied for a variance by the zoning administrator for the amount of storage space.
So if they exceed, nobody complains, it's okay?
We are a complaint-driven county for zoning violations, so
Asking forgiveness later.
perhaps Mr. Kane
You
can
have that
complain
lot.
about it next time he does his New Year's Day run.
Oh, I don't run on New Year's Day. Pete does that.
and I don't do it anymore, so.
That's right.
So it's up to the owner or the leasee to.
Stay in compliance.
To stay in compliance.
And that's the case with any project. This one's not an exception to that. They did not last time, which is the only reason we're here today doing this as-built, basically, existing conditions plan.
But isn't that part of the zoning, to look at these things? I mean, they approve to a certain point, but then when it goes over that, they just let it happen?
Once the property, and we're getting more into zoning administrator territory here talking about this, but once a property receives a complaint and comes into a compliance, that case is closed. As you might imagine, there are oftentimes repeat offenders. I'm not saying that this situation will be that way, but somebody would have to call in and make that complaint again. And generally, I'll say, from my experience working in zoning, there's usually somebody who lives near a property who is the one picking up the phone every time they notice a problem, and they will make repeat complaints about that, and that's a whole different discussion. That's the way that the county works right now. It is a complaint-driven system.
Yeah. Yeah, if I may, we do not have the zoning staff to go around and proactively look for violations. So, yeah, so essentially, it's, if there's a complaint, we open an investigation and we look into what the issue is and then address accordingly. And so, and that, as Kirsten has mentioned, that's how we're here for this project.
Okay.
It was a farm equipment dealership at one time, so there was quite a bit of equipment sitting around there.
Okay. So I think it sounds like there's going to be a need, we shouldn't delegate final approval to the chair. We should have folks come back before us, because it sounds like there's a lot of work that's going to be done in terms of the site development and buildings and structures and things like that. So I think we'd like to see that.
Yeah,
Well, if I could, I mean, we will need to get final site plan approval before we can apply for our building permits for the portables and the tents.
Okay.
And so right now, the only thing that we're gonna add to the plan would be the landscape. Now, if you wanna see that, I mean, I don't know if my client would object to coming back to the full commission.
Okay. So let's see it.
Yeah.
okay,
Thank you.
good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Dan.
Oh, any public comment? I even have it highlighted on mine.
Now, Kirsten, I do want to ask a clarifying question here. So is this an instance where I got someone from the county kind of said, there may be more going on here than we approved? And I just want to say, if someone from the county did see it, that they ought to get kudos. So,
Right.
yeah, no, because again, who's got time to go out there with a tape measure, you know? But if y'all saw it and you did kind of, hey,
Yeah.
this is more than what we approved, good for you, good for all of you. So thank you. That's
Very
it.
good.
That's all I got.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Okay, so next up is approval of final draft of the 2023 Transportation Master Plan. And Mary and Clara, Mary solo today.
Transportation Master Plan, Part 23.
And for now, hopefully the last.
That's it. Let's do it.
I have no presentation. You're welcome. So we're here today because, as you know, we've been reviewing this for over a year, pretty much at every meeting. At the last meeting, Claire and I presented the last part. We addressed a couple quick questions, but really it's ready to be at the stage. We're hoping that you would accept it. It will serve as the foundation of the upcoming master plan. We will present it, do a briefing for the county commissioners so they're aware of it as well. But what we're looking for today is simply just a motion to accept this, and then we will, again, move forward with it as the basis for the transportation element.
So, you guys did yeoman's effort, work, analysis, tons of time. Just quick question, because Pete and I were talking about this earlier, how this is all needs to be related. And our next presentation, the land use study and economic development for the county. Obviously, a part of that presentation is going to talk a lot, I think, about Liberty Road, 140, and all that. How do you guys, are you independent of that study, or do you work together with those folks? Because you can't have one without the other, it seems.
No, we've been working together. I mean, it's the planning the Department of Planning and Land Management that's been overseeing this whole thing. So no, we will be working, and eventually, the point of this being the foundation of the transportation element of the master plan, and what you're going to hear in a few minutes being the foundation of the economic development element.
Right.
The two will have to go hand in
You
hand.
gotta have.
As well as additional elements
Certain
like
baselines
housing.
you have to have, and transportation system is
Yes.
absolutely one of them.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I would move we approve it without any additions and send it on up to the commissioners.
I would second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Public comment? Any public comment?
You're railroading, man.
Hearing none, seeing none. Nobody wants to step up to the microphone today? Okay, next up, Economic Development and Land Use Study, the briefing by Andrew Gray, AICP, and Paige Sunderland.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can just X out of that.
Actually, go to the, we have to go through a few prompts here. Go to the bottom and hit back or.
Actually, let's just do this for now.
There you go.
Will it let you better than me?
Maybe not.
It won't let you. Nice try.
Good try.
There we go. There we go. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I guess from segueing from the Transportation Master Plan into the Carroll County Economic Development and Land Use Study, we've been before you a couple times, but just want to provide you the conclusions and the draft study. I am here with, or I should say, the people who have been working on this, Director Hine, Bureau Chief Lane, myself, Paige Sunderland from Economic Development, Courtney Powell from WGI, the county consultant, and also members of the consultant team who are not here, John Stover and Jordan Howard. Just to give a little brief background, because we all know with planning, public engagement is key. The first public workshop was held in February at Exploration Commons. We also had an information table booth at one of the commissioners' public outreach sessions at Coppermine Pantherplex in Hampstead. Also, for the second public workshop, this included 3 outreach events. One was at Exploration Commons in Westminster, another one was at Carroll Community College in Westminster, and also the third one was at Thunderhead Bowl in Tawnytown. The consultant team also reached out to students in local colleges, and we had online outreach that accompanied each in-person event. And also, just special note, being conscientious about our growing Hispanic population in Carroll County, we also reached out to the Hispanic community with multilingual flyers as well, to try to include all segments of our population. So for today's objectives, county consultant will provide you an update of where the draft land use study is to date. Next month, or I should say on the 29th, we will be back to collect any of your comments and feedback. Then after that, this will go to the Board of County Commissioners for a briefing. There's no action needed today, and there'll be no formal vote on the 29th, as this information will go help form one of the backbones of the Carroll County Master Plan that you will all be very involved in. And just one last slide for me. Anyone who is watching from the public would like more information and to read this study, you can either click the button here, or go to this website, or take your cell phone out and scan that QR code, and it will direct you to the County Bureau of Comprehensive Planning's webpage that contains this study. Without further ado, on my behalf, just real quick, Paige, do you have anything you want to add before I punt it over to Ms. Powell?
It's been an experience. We've had a lot of ups and downs, and we were talking this morning, we're the 3 original left standing. So I don't know if this study is just looking to get rid of us all. I don't know. But we appreciate you hearing us today, and look forward to your comments regarding the landscape of economic development in Carroll County.
Courtney, I will
Okay.
punt it over to you and just tell me when you want me to
Okay.
change slides.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Good morning, Vice Chair and Commissioners. As Andrew said, my name is Courtney Powell, and I am our manager for our urban and community planning side of WGI, and I'm based out of our Arlington, Virginia office, so not too far from you all, and appreciate you having me here this morning to present the briefing on this study along with staff. Mary was kind enough to bequeath her slides to give to me, so I apologize. I'll try to make this as informative as possible and brief at the same time, if those can go hand in hand. And before I jump in, as Paige said, this has been a process that has had its turns and twists, but excited to be here today. We were just saying, can't believe we actually are here with the final draft study. And I think, a lot of good relationships and conversations were had to give you this baseline to be used in your master plan process as you move forward with that. Next slide, please. So, as you may be aware, we officially kicked off this project last year in October, and over the past 8 to 10 months, our team comprised of WGI, JSNA, we also had Wildan Financial Services early on in the process, along with county staff. We've worked together to develop this baseline assessment of where Carroll County is from an economic development perspective, and hopefully shed some informative insights for you all as you move into that general development plan process that maybe can help give you some footings or groundwork or things to think about as you start making any policy decisions and your outlook for the future growth of the county. So in greater detail, there was a lot that happened through this process in those 8 to 10 months. You can see here on the slide, definitely phase 1 and phase 2 were very packed with different elements to be able to get this study together. Phase 1 really kind of harnessed in on the public engagement side and developing those relationships. You all have, it really has been an enjoyment to work with your community. There is some great historical knowledge, as well as kind of the current undertakings and an outlook for what the community as well as staff would kind of like to see Carroll go, as well as still maintaining what everyone prides themselves on in this area that makes it unique. Phase 2 basically built off of those conversations where we looked at the data, and those conversations brought the life out of the data than just data and numbers. And then phase 3 is where we are today, where we'll have this briefing, and again, we'll come back in the end of the month to receive any comments or questions, and then go to the Board of County Commissioners in December. So as mentioned, the public engagement was a really critical part to this project. We had over 350 participants, which I think is really great. A whole host of different avenues that we use to have those engagements, some more formal open house events to just individual conversations. And as Andrew touched upon, we did have a student survey to kind of target that demographic based on the assets that you have with your collegiate resources and industry training attributes that you have, and to kind of get their feedback on what may help them stay here to maintain your workforce and feed into it for the future. This is just a snapshot of the 6 main sections within the study. And so in the following slides, I'll kind of just hit kind of the high points of each of those. Next slide. So in general, highlighted throughout the study that you'll see, the county reflects a stable economy with a broad economic base. You have a range of industries, which is great, especially for the economic vitality. Not all of your eggs are in one basket. You also are known for your agricultural production. You have a steady employment base with high levels of employment.
And you have quality economic development resources for small business services to workforce development and kind of everything in between. So like many things in long-range planning, understanding population trends is kind of that first essential thing to inform the other parts of the study. We looked at basically the past 23 years, and the county has grown by about 16%, which gives you about a 16% overall growth rate, which is just under 1% of an average annual rate. To put these numbers into some more local context and how that relates to some of your neighboring counties, your growth rate is similar to and slightly above the Baltimore County and Adams County, Pennsylvania areas. And then Howard and Frederick counties do have a little higher average annual growth rate, as you can see there, to about double to slightly above double that of Carroll County. In terms of your regional economic activity, it was found that the county is in the top half of the state's 23 counties for your gross domestic product, also known as GDP, which is the standard metric for comparing and assessing economic activity. It's also noteworthy to mention that the county makes a valuable contribution to the regional economy, despite being surrounded by some other bustling counties like Frederick, Howard, and Baltimore, and you still maintain that rural identity that we heard so many feel that they love and cherish about this county. More specifically, with the businesses and industries, like I said, you have a stable economy with a broad base of industries. And the top ones that kind of stick out in this area include healthcare and social assistance. About 4 out of 10 employers fall within this industry classification. Retailers is also very high, service-oriented businesses, construction companies, about 1 out of every 10 company in Carroll falls in that industry. And then also other professional, scientific, and technical services. And we did find a concentration of that industry around Westminster because that's where a lot of those business parks are located. Okay. Similar to understanding your general population forecast, we wanted to look at the employment trends and projections. One thing that's interesting to look at is your employment base and whether or not what their commuter patterns are like. And so out of your, which actually maybe I'm skipping ahead, that might be the next couple slide. So to back up, your employment base, the majority of them fall within the private sector classification of companies, and 14% fall within the public, which is mostly local government. Despite the widespread kind of turmoil that everyone felt across the nation with the COVID-19 pandemic, Carroll County actually stood out as being able to maintain a very healthy unemployment rate over the past 10 years and also through that cycle. And the long-range employment projections anticipate that your county will increase by about 11% over the next 30 years. So as I was mentioning, we were looking also at the commuter patterns of your workforce. The majority do travel outside of the county, about 70%. So based on those numbers, it's kind of known as a bedroom community where people like the quality of life for living here and then commute outside of the county for work and then come back home. And so you have about 20% that live and work within the county. And overall, anyone in that total workforce travels about 24 miles or less to work. So the Economic Development Department and Planning and Resources, is that the Planning and land management, sorry. As I said, there's been a lot of changes through this process. But there, you offer a lot of resources within the county jurisdiction itself, but outside as well. And so they're all in alignment with what we tend to consider as those best practices for economic development and retention. And those include expanding the tax base, prioritizing business attraction and retention, preserving the region's agricultural character, and ensuring that the county remains that attractive and desirable community of that rural nature that we heard so much of. So this just provides some examples of those resources that are at everyone's disposal, as well as partnerships. The next section within the real estate market overview did find that although the county is predominantly rural, it's becoming more and more suburban, just kind of feeling some of those development pressures and growth around the area. But overall, again, your market is healthy, although it is small, it's still healthy. This is a snapshot of the real estate market of housing and rental rates for retail and multifamily. At the time that we took this, the data, so this may have some variations now if you look at it, but at the time of the study, it's considered that the county is a seller's market, meaning that home prices are higher and the homes are selling more quickly. The value of the homes have increased by about 5%, and also the number of homes in the past year or two has also gone down by 5%. So it's, becoming more competitive, as you can see. You're still lower than the Baltimore region as a whole, but the prices have increased where now you're kind of falling in the middle of your peer counties than towards the bottom of that. And looking at the commercial trends, before diving into some of these specifics, it's important to note that when we are speaking of the commercial net absorption, it encompasses office, retail, industrial, and flex space sectors. So between the last 23 years, so 2000 to 2023, the commercial growth observed in the county was comparatively lower than that of Howard, Frederick, and Baltimore counties. They do have a larger population, so that can lend into that as well. Your office market is considered to be mid-sized, and the vacancy rate has been unchanged over the past year. But at about 5.5%, the rate was below the 10-year average of the first quarter of this year, 2023. And your industrial submarket is also considered to be mid-sized, and you have a lot of large facilities that account for over 8 million square feet total. And your hotel and hospitality industry, that tends to be seasonal, where it peaks kind of in the spring, summer months. It did see an impact during the COVID-19 pandemic, but much of that industry did, so nothing really of note in that sector. One thing, though, that was interesting is the inventory of your hotel has been stagnant over the past basically 3 decades. And there has been no new large-scale hotels since, 1989. So it's been a while since any in that industry. You have beds and breakfasts and, smaller things like that, but no real change in that market. Retail rents in the retail submarket did increase by about 27%, which that corresponds to the Baltimore area over the past 10 years as well. Then another section that we looked at was just kind of the functions of county operations in general, of how if a business is looking to come into the county or you're targeting a certain industry, just kind of what that overall process is. So in general, this is kind of the workflow. It can fall into two areas, sometimes maybe both. You have a site plan permit process that you're familiar with, and then the building permit process, and depending on what the application is, may garner both or one. And as you know, there's different departments that handle both of those legs. One thing that we did discuss at length in this process internally as the project team, but also looking at your peer counties, was a priority process review. And no one really in this area provides that. What is rather common is that the applicant is more than welcome to hire a third party on their own terms to review their applications for consistency and compliance with that jurisdiction's regulations, in hopes that once they submit it to the county, that all those boxes are checked and there's not something that is out of alignment and then may cause delay in their approval process. So that's not a county-initiated process, that is an applicant, but that is definitely welcomed if they would like to do that. Another way of kind of where we looked at this was, how can a jurisdiction, when one of those high-priority projects or targets you do want to bring into the county, how can you help from a business perspective on the entitlement process? And the county recently, you did just install this priority process review, where it's a joint thing between the planning and economic development, where they kind of become those liaisons and give them the resources that they need and help them through that process, because as we know, time is money on a lot of those things. So. Okay, and then the next section was looking at the zoning and land use. This section largely kind of was based off of the economic development analysis and those types of industries that are suitable for the county or build upon that you already have, and how your land use may be already situated to allow for those things to happen, or if there's maybe any opportunities or barriers for you all to consider through your master plan update on maybe things that could be altered or to gain those opportunities. So in general, most of your land, about 64% of it, and this is countywide, so all unincorporated and incorporated lands within Carroll County, fall within the agricultural designation. And then behind that is your conservation, and I know you have that target of preserving and conserving a certain amount of land for conservation solely. And then residential, and then you have the small percentage that falls within that industrial commercial. And you have some zoning designations with the plan unit development and the employment campus and mixed use that kind of all fall within that category as well. Within the county, you have the designated growth areas, or DGAs. These are very important because this is really where any economic growth is focused, and these are the areas that as a county have been decided to focus that growth and development in order to preserve that agricultural and conservation land throughout the county. So you can see that the town of Union Bridge was found to have the second largest amount of vacant industrial land, but there is a property owner that does own much of that land for their own purposes, but that is part of that equation. So in addition to your DGAs as being primary areas to look at, and that we also looked at in the study for opportunities, the main corridors of 140 and 26 are also important. And kind of going back to the transportation study, these do go hand in hand, and again, kind of providing that base assessment. So when you're in your master plan, you can kind of look at both of these studies to decide what path you want to go. The growth scenario section, in my opinion, is probably one of the most valuable tools in this study to consider. This is where we really took the conversations, the intel from your staff, and also just the general data and numbers and mapping. But these growth scenarios, we gave 4 scenarios of kind of how the growth could happen versus the population growth as well as economics. We married it with the public sentiment as well through our open houses to kind of see where where everything kind of lines up. And so in each of those scenarios, you'll see that it ranges from a no growth scenario, which basically is where you're freezing where you are now and not having any growth, and if anything, you might have a slight decline, to a high growth scenario. We're looking at infrastructure limitations, so school capacity, water supply, we all know that is a big constraint here in the county, as well as the transportation network. And then you can see here the opportunities and constraints fell into 6 main categories, from the market demand, market development, land use, infrastructure, fiscal sustainability, which essentially means based on your current budget and maybe projected budget, how all of these would balance to be able to have either a balanced budget or a near balanced budget as opposed to a deficit. And then again, the public sentiment with, what did we hear that the community wants? And, can we bring these kind of all together if possible? And actually, I think you are able to get to a good kind of medium spot where we heard the community was, favorable of anywhere basically from that scenario B to the scenario C, which falls into that low to moderate growth kind of projection. And from a data and economic analysis standpoint, that's also what seems to be the most sustainable for the county, where you get to still maintain that character, but bring in some more industry, have some more economic development, bring in a little more population, but you're not sacrificing the quality of life that you currently have. The other important part to this study is the opportunities section, and this basically is kind of like a big toolbox, if you will, where it's things that maybe already are being done within the county or by county staff, and then also opportunities that to either build upon or add into that kind of toolbox that you all could use if you so choose. So one thing that we looked at was looking at the vacant land. The Planning Bureau keeps a great database of vacant land and developable land. And so you can kind of see here the numbers of what is available. And again, the MD 140 and 26 corridors are prime opportunities to focus that growth and development. There is a vacant and developable, or I think we called it greenfield and redevelopment matrix in the study. There's a total of 31 sites. I also think this is a key component to the study to help inform some areas. On the screen here, you'll see that there's the top 5 site opportunities, but essentially what we did was looking at any infrastructure constraints, whether the site is currently vacant or maybe underutilized for redevelopment, the zoning of it, the future land use, whether it falls within a designated growth area or not. We created a ranking methodology in Matrix to basically evaluate all these sites that could be an opportunity for economic development. And also, the ranking was, the higher score basically meant that that site is more ready today, as if someone wants to come in Paige could show them and say, hey, we got this site ready for you, infrastructure, you know, everything is ready to go. You could start today if you wanted to, all the way to, well, there is an opportunity here, but maybe there are some bigger steps that need to happen, whether it needs some infrastructure or some things in the entitlement process or a change in zoning or future land use is maybe not correct in order to make that site prime and a prime opportunity to move forward. So I definitely would encourage you to focus on that matrix and kind of, you know, see where the opportunities are. But there's definitely things that you have that are ready today and kind of gives you a roadmap for things to work on in the future, so you have a continual pipeline. One thing that we did in one of our open houses was we kind of played off of the Monopoly theme of that game, and we had a range of industry sectors that we felt were suitable given Carroll County's characteristics and current state. And so each station was its own industry sector, and the participants were given money to invest in what industries that they felt they would like to see more of or incorporate, or they felt like best suited the area. And so those with the highest dollar amount at the end of the event basically turned into those top targeted industries. Those all, and here's some examples: the hospitality and agritourism, manufacturing, and the small business incubation were those top three within the main ones that we had. As I mentioned, this opportunity section is kind of looked at that as that overall tools in the toolbox. So there are some things pointed out specifically, and here's just kind of a snapshot of it. And again, these are things that already are in place, or maybe some opportunities. And like for instance, the impact fees, which I think is our. In the next couple slides, we'll talk about some opportunities. You already have some for school impact fees, but we did find with some other nearby jurisdictions and areas that they have a transportation impact fee. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. From a revenue generation perspective, about 42% come from income tax. And then about just slightly over 44% is from your property tax, and that is largely from your residential properties. So here's the transportation impact fee considerations. The case studies that are presented in the study include Montgomery County, Baltimore, and Gaithersburg, Maryland, where they have this transportation impact fee, and essentially it's that dedicated source of revenue to fund transportation projects. And in there, it also talks about some of the ways that you can kind of consider on how to develop such a plan or a revenue stream if you so choose. We also, JSNA, they went into an example kind of revenue generation of 9 illustrative businesses that fall within those top industry sectors of tourism, hospitality, which includes the agritourism, so any wineries, breweries, that type of thing, manufacturing, office, and industrial, to kind of see what type of revenue generation that those would bring and are currently bringing in the county. So you can kind of see how that may impact the county's overall budget to get it to either a balanced budget or perhaps, a profiting one. And so it really ranges anywhere from 12,000 to 2.5 million. That larger number is really for those larger industrial or manufacturing industries. And you'll see in the back of the report their analysis on those businesses, and really you can mix and mingle as much as you want. So, you could have, if you wanted let's just say 50 wineries and breweries to make up that budget deficit. That, that's one avenue, may not be the most sustainable, but, maybe having like another big industry, bringing that in can really help close that gap, and then you have those other local businesses to help supplement that. And just to conclude, as we mentioned before, we will come back before you all. John Stover with JSNA will be with me, so if you have any specific questions about the economic development and impact kind of analysis, he'll be definitely a good one to answer on those. So we'll be back on the November 29th. And then we will be doing a very similar briefing to this to the Board of County Commissioners on December 21st. So thank you again. It really has been a pleasure, and excited to get your feedback and appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. So as I understand this, the meeting of the 29th, which is back on the agenda, is for us to go home, study this, absorb it, develop our questions, and then we'll have a Q&A during the 29th.
Exactly. So we've mentioned a couple times about these building blocks that we're developing for the next comprehensive planning process. So we talked about the transportation master plan. This is another building block. We've got some others that are in the works. So we're trying to build all these pieces so that it's information that'll help you with informed decisions then as we start working through the comprehensive planning process. So really the 29th is going to be a great opportunity for you all to pick Courtney's brain and the rest of the team as far as the results of the report and what they've come up with, get some questions answered in person, and then also indicate to us as far as what other information from an economic development perspective you feel that you would need moving forward with the comprehensive planning process, right? So we can look into how we could get that additional information and so on, so we can pull all the pieces together as we then move forward with that whole comp plan process.
Good. I hope Commissioner Gordon's there. He doesn't talk a lot during the meetings, but I think it'd be important to get the perspective of the commissioners, about revenue, about, what's their vision as well, for us, to all be working on the same page.
Yes. And certainly our intent is that we will be presenting this to the Board of County Commissioners and getting feedback from them as well, from the results of the study and all of that. So we'll be pulling all of that information, all the thoughts together in the overall comp plan process.
Especially the mall. I was just in there last week, and it breaks your heart to see the inside of the mall. Just, well, what's left of it anyway. I feel like it's just such an untapped. Could be again.
That's happening everywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately.
We've really changed how we do things.
Retail's changed a lot.
Yep.
Brick and mortar has changed.
Everything's fluid. That's today, and now we're back to the old strip mall concept that we all hated.
I personally enjoy a good mall. It's warm in the winter, it's cool in the summer, you're dry when it's raining, everything is right there.
20 years ago, we hated strip malls, and now we're approving one after another. It's just the fluidity.
I also grew up in the mall generation too, where that's where you went on it.
See, there we go. You were cruising the mall in your hot rod. Yeah, I get it. I
We're a
get it.
1985 Camaro.
There you go. We're a mall rat. Now we know.
Sharon, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Please.
Courtney, do you have figures that will be brought out about how much revenue is generated from the industry and the businesses? You put percentages up here. Do you have actual numbers of, and I'm not asking you to bring them now.
Sure.
It's something to consider, question number one. Question number two, you talked about the stakeholders and the outreach in the community. How much outreach was put toward the ag community in this study?
Well, I believe, and I may pass this over to you, Andrew, but you went through basically the whole county, right, to distribute the information. So we did have the in-person, and coupled with each of the in-person meetings, we had a virtual kind of survey online component as well.
Was that with Farm Bureau or the leadership of the county? How did you reach out to the ag community?
I believe Matt Hoff was on a stakeholder interview panel.
Yes.
Of course, he's not here today, but.
No, but yeah, he was.
And Diana Hare, we worked with Diana out of my office to do some outreach into the ag community as well. And to, the first question you answered, I believe John Stover did put that number together in
Yes.
his information about what revenue comes from the business.
Okay, I appreciate if you'd have it available. Just,
Yeah, I'll make sure that he has that, yep.
I'm not putting you on the spot now.
No, and he's really the brains behind all those numbers. I'm more on the planning land use side, so he'll definitely be able to bring those specifics.
And if I may, Courtney, you alluded to that information was distributed around the county. It was. We took posters for our public outreach events to each city or town hall in the county. So anyone who came in to pay a water bill or converse with the towns, that information was there to let them know about our public outreach.
Of course, it was also on the website, the county's main website, our website as well. My department was tweeting it, or Xing it now, I don't know what it's called anymore, but using social media to get the word out about this.
I promise this is the last question.
Oh, and if you don't mind, I'll just add to that.
Did you also consider the natural resource availability? For
Yes.
Water?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we did.
So if I may, that speaks to another building block, right? So there is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but there is a water resources element to the comprehensive plan. And we are currently working on going through that process as well. So, and it's all kind of these puzzle pieces that at some point over the next year or two, we'll be pulling those together, and we'll be looking for you all to discuss how those puzzle pieces fit together, and how does what we influence on the transportation side affect the economic side? How does the availability of water resources affect the economic side? And they all are all intermingled, and that's going to be the fun that we'll be having over the next 2 years.
And that's where the 31 sites, the matrix in there is kind of, it helps give you all a starting point. So like Chris was saying, that once you start really talking about the fiscal impact and what decisions you want to make on land use and transportation and economic development, that at least now you've kind of collated down to 31 sites as opposed to the whole county. And then you can kind of start evaluating and putting like the specific numbers to, okay, to get this really ready, or, you know, does the community want this site? And all those sites really are within the DGAs already, and we had coordination with the other towns and cities too. So just to kind of, you know, it's not the end all be all on that list. It just kind of provides a first kind of guiding point.
I have a question about, in one of the slides, the land available, the Beatty property was listed. Is there anything, because that plan was already approved, there's mixed use in there, is anything happening?
That got dropped. They dropped the contract.
So actually, it's back.
Is it?
Yes, it's back. So developer is very interested in moving forward with that. It's still the same proposal, which is industrial and residential. The developer is proposing 4 separate projects. So looking at the overall master plan of that property, they're looking at 4 distinct projects that they're looking to process. The first one has been submitted, and county staff are currently reviewing it. That'll be going to the technical review committee at the end of this month, and we anticipate having the other 3 projects submitted in the next week or 2.
Wow.
So we would anticipate, as we work through, as you know, our process, we work through getting the concept approved from a staff perspective, that probably sometime in the next 4 or 5 months, you'll be seeing that before you as a concept plan, all 4 of those distinct projects.
It's good to hear.
Chris, I noticed, and this is not a question, it's a statement. I noticed that you talked about the Avondale Road area. How about the 31 corridor that whole corridor from Avondale Road to New Windsor is pretty well industrial, except for a couple small patches that were put into ag preservation in the beginning of the program. So there is a huge corridor on 31 that is industrial. Was that considered when you set this up?
Yes, I'll take
Yes.
that one.
That was a question, wasn't it?
And I'll give you an answer or a statement.
Well, I'm looking for a page.
Thank you. Yes, there is a lot of land there. It's in that list of the 31 sites that Courtney has talked about. And in fact, there is a developer, I just got an update the other day, that he's doing the old Beecham Royer Christmas tree farm. I still call it that, aging myself there. But so things are moving there, but also there are some geographic type of challenges in that area.
Quarry is one thing, that's a huge problem.
Yes, and you know, the sinkholes have developed previously, and that is still something that, you know, that area inherently is going to be looked at. So there are opportunities there, but in terms of marketability, it's, you know, it's got its challenges.
It's the old Stockyards property, and then you head up to the road, you get into some ag pres ground, that's short-lived.
Yes.
But I'd hate to see all of that go into nothing but solar panels, and that's about where we are now in that area, and that's not a very good use of land.
Right,
As far
and
as
it's also-
back to the county and tax-based properties.
Right.
That's what I'm most concerned about. But there are good industries in that area that have not been affected by sinkholes.
Correct.
Or blasting.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it's, I guess it's one of those areas.
I know we can have this conversation later, but I've seen that just sit there stagnant for years and years and years, and I was just wondering.
Yeah, there's also the water availability question.
Pumping 1.5 million gallons of water out of that quarry every day, and there's no water available.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes no sense, but.
The one developer I spoke of, he's actually annexed into the city, so he will have public water and sewer. So he'll be able to develop that.
They ran a line.
That's
from
for
the quarry.
gray water? Is it gray
That
water?
was for,
So,
Out to
from
PFG?
the quarry.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a gray water line that,
Quarry water line from the quarry to Westminster,
yes,
a line about this big around.
yes, yeah,
And quite a few years ago, so, I mean,
yeah.
I've never understood why you can pump 1.5 million gallons of water out in a stream and not have any water.
Yeah, so it's, it has to do with the MDE, well, it's the MDE appropriations, of what's allowed to be used. So the city of Westminster has approval to use that water on an emergency basis. They do not,
It was Hyde's Quarry, right? That emergency basis only?
so there's no appropriation for Hyde's Quarry currently.
We just own it,
We just own it,
no appropriation.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, but in theory, if there's funding for a capital project to install infrastructure from Hyde's Quarry, that is a potential water source, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. So this is terrific. I mean, this is the start of many other concurrent projects and the data and the analysis and forecasting, and we got to have this so we can plan. So very, very useful. So we look forward to having you back
Thank you.
and
Look forward to
pummeling you with more questions.
Right.
And,
Comments.
Promise you'll come back.
Good stuff.
Yes.
I encourage the board to go back and look at that PowerPoint. There's a lot of good information. There's a lot of, questions that will come to you as you're reading through it. And I encourage you to do that and bring those questions back to the next meeting on the
Yeah,
29th.
and I'm sorry, please look at the report, the full report.
Yes.
Not just the PowerPoint, yes. This was a very high-level
Yes.
view of it, and there's a lot of really good information in that overall report.
Great,
So,
good point.
Yes.
Good point. Okay. Any other? Any public comment?
You're the man on top of it.
All right. Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Got a second? All right, everyone. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.